Here we grow in warehouses as opposed to greenhouses. Most greens are grown in Northern California, Arizona, Mexico. And here we are in Newark, New Jersey, in a tougher part of Newark, to make our greens available to the community where there is a food desert. We grow in 16-day crop cycles, allowing us to have approximately 22 crop turns a year versus 3 in the field. We grow without sun, without soil. We use 95% less water, 0 pesticides, and approximately 50% less fertilizers. Kids grow up habitually eating this category. Later in life, they don't look at it as a funny green food. We put a farm in a school in Newark, New Jersey. Society needs to start thinking in terms of not how many calories they put in their bodies, but how much nutrition they're putting in their bodies. And that comes with forming the right habits in kids, and we hope to play our part in helping create the right habits. The macro pains that our world and humanity is going through, increases in population, increases in urbanization. Often where we produce food isn't coupled with where the people are that eat the food. So here we're creating that linkage. Our vision is to build farms at scale in cities all over the world.
Nothing else is playing. Good. Good morning, everyone. I want to thank you for coming to our Food Policy for Breakfast seminar series. I want to welcome you to Hunter College on a rainy Monday morning. And I really appreciate coming out on a morning like today with all the traffic and all the issues that happened over the weekend. My name is Charles Platkin, and I am the director of the New York City Food Policy Center at Hunter College, and I'm a professor here at Hunter College. We have a very interesting panel discussion planned for you this morning. I've always been fascinated by agriculture technology, and I'm very pleased this morning to have a wonderful panel with Kathy Soll, CEO of Teens for Food Justice, Jason Green, CEO of Edenworks, Robert Laing, CEO of Farm.one, Ed Harwood, co-founder and chief science officer of AeroFarms, and Stephen Ritz of the Green Bronx Machine, and Henry Gordon-Smith from Blue Planet Consulting, who will give some keynotes. And I'd like to welcome Henry, a sustainability consultant focused on urban agriculture, water issues, and emerging technologies. And he's going to give us an overview on ag technology. Thank you. Here we go again.
Here we grow in warehouses as opposed to greenhouses.
Okay, look at those silhouettes we have there. Good morning. How's it going? Thank you for coming to the inaugural and first part of NYC AgTech Week. This is our second NYC AgTech Week, and we're really excited to have you here at the beginning of it. My name is Henry Gordon-Smith. I'm going to be speaking about the spectrum of urban agriculture in New York City. This is an adaptation of a presentation I did to the city of Paris last year on kind of some of the activities that are happening in New York City. A little background on me, because I think it shows what's happening in this city and how exciting of a place it is to come and do urban agriculture. 5 years ago, I packed my bags and I bought a one-way ticket to come to New York City with big dreams of being an urban farmer. And I've learned a lot through that time and been able to work with a lot of the exciting companies happening here. And I really believe this. I think if you can grow it here, you can grow it anywhere. That doesn't just mean grow food, it means grow your business, it means grow your ideas, grow your technology. So as you go throughout NYC AgTech Week this week, think about that and think how you can contribute and take part. Here's a spectrum of urban agriculture projects in New York City and New Jersey. This is my attempt to try and help you think holistically as you go and you experience different urban farms in our great city. So on the low-tech side, you can see we have kind of soil-based outdoor examples, one being Battery Park Urban Farm. Then we have Brooklyn Grange, the largest rooftop soil-based urban farm in the world. So integrated into the building, a little bit more high-tech, but still soil-based and exposed to climate. Harlen Growth is an interesting hybrid because they use a hydroponic greenhouse and they also have a soil-based urban farm next to it. But they are experimenting a lot with these new technologies and how their community will engage with it. Sky Vegetables is a rooftop hydroponic greenhouse integrated into a building, an affordable housing complex. And then AeroFarms, as we just saw, is developing the largest indoor vertical farm in the world. So completely enclosed, no sunlight, no soil. What I'm going to try and do today is to formulate some of the ways we can look at urban agriculture and kind of give it a bit of a rating. Now, a lot of these ratings are my opinion. It's really more about how you can perceive urban farms and judge them in your own way and how they contribute to the city. So I've picked 4 categories for this exercise. One of them being aesthetic. Now, this is an important one because there's a big kind of zeitgeist around urban agriculture that should be beautiful and exposed so people can go and experience it. Some urban farms do that and others don't. With the emergence of new technologies, you can also integrate it into facades and other means. And I think it's really important to think about how urban agriculture can communicate to young people through aesthetic, and also any age group, and teach us about where our food comes from, even if we might not be buying from that farm in particular. There's the economic benefits, creating jobs, generating revenue for the city. There's the social benefits, creating communities and people who can collaborate and new ways to engage with each other. And then there's ecological benefits. Maybe it's hydroponic, it's saving water. Maybe it's providing green infrastructure. These are some of the ecological benefits of urban agriculture. So when we look at aesthetic, we ask, how beautiful is this project? When we look at social, we say, how well does the farm engage the community? Economic, how much yield does the farm produce? And then ecological, does the farm encourage biodiversity? Does it reduce the urban heat island effect, etc.? So beginning with Battery Park Urban Farm, we can see this maybe has a high level of aesthetic. It's exposed. You can walk right up to it. You can walk inside of it. You can really engage with the plants and the farm itself. The economic benefits are probably low because it has to be exposed to the climate. So in the wintertime, it's not producing as much. The social impact I would rate as high because, again, you have that community engagement. They have workshops. They have a farm school. I think the ecological benefits are also high because it's contributing to biodiversity in an area that is highly urbanized. And also in New York City, we have a major issue with green infrastructure and rainwater events. And so especially in the Lower East Side, or in Battery Park area, this is an important issue to solve. So there you can see some of the workshops and some of the beauty of Battery Park Urban Farm. Moving on to Brooklyn Grange Rooftop Farm, which is really an amazing project and a great example to the rest of the world what NYC can do. I would rate it more on a medium side of aesthetic. Why? Because when you're up there, it's extremely beautiful and you can have some very exciting events and experience it, but it's not necessarily open to the public. You can't just walk up there any time and you can't necessarily see it all the time. I think the economic benefit is medium, again, because it's exposed to climate, but it is making more money than Battery Park Urban Farm, I would say, because it's having a lot of events, a lot of weddings, it's a really hot destination. So it's diversifying its revenue streams, as we saw here with the yoga. I think the social impact is medium. They have their own nonprofit that is meant to educate youth on urban agriculture. And I think the ecological benefits, again, are high because of the biodiversity contributions and also the green infrastructure contributions. Harlen Growth is really a great place. When I first moved to New York, I would go there a lot and volunteer. We tried to work with them to help them kind of winterize their greenhouse. And it's really an amazing project what Tony Hillary is working on there and his team. So here's some more images of Harlen Growth. You can see that greenhouse there. Pretty amazing, right? There's buildings on 3 sides, and then that's the inside of it. They're growing about 8,000 plants there, and they give those to the community, some of them, and they sell some to high-end restaurants. So a really amazing project happening there. I think the aesthetic is high there because you can just walk up. You can really engage in it. You can go talk to them about urban agriculture. You can learn about it. I think the economic value is still very difficult for Harlen Growth. I think they have a tough time raising that money all the time to keep it running. And I think that's going to be an ongoing challenge. The social impact, I believe, is very high because, again, it's got that engagement. It's educating a lot of youth. There's a school across the street that benefits from the produce. And I've been there myself and just seen how many young people are excited about the subject as a result of it. Ecological benefits, again, I would put as high, contributing to green infrastructure in a place where there really is so much concrete. Sky Vegetables Hydroponic Rooftop Farm is in the Bronx. It's a rooftop, 8,500 square foot greenhouse. Right now it employs about 3 staff, so not an enormous number, but it's an interesting project for sure. Growing mostly basil. This is an older picture where it's just growing lettuces and things like that, and some chard in the background. So the aesthetic value of this is medium. Why? Because you can look at it and you can see there's a greenhouse on it. All of the kind of affordable housing complexes around it can see that and start to think, is that a farm? What does that mean? Where's my food coming from? And just, I believe in that kind of power of design. The economic value is medium. The greenhouse is small. It's not at scale where it can really make the best money it could, but it is doing well. I think the social impact is low. Sky Vegetables has really had a hard time engaging with the community. You can imagine in the Bronx, growing basil, it's not necessarily what everyone wants to eat. And so there's really a big challenge for a lot of urban farms, including Sky Vegetables, to engage their local community. And that will be an ongoing challenge, I think, for many of them, to reduce the cost of the product and to engage them. I think the ecological value is medium, because although it's not contributing to biodiversity, it is growing food year-round, and it's using hydroponic systems which are saving water, and it's reducing those food miles by growing close to home. Moving on to the very exciting AeroFarms, and again, these are my opinions. I would say the aesthetic value is a bit low. I mean, I'm inspired when I see the images on the internet, but we can't really necessarily engage with it directly. Although we really are excited to see what this facade is going to look like, and I really don't know much about how the community is going to be involved in this. If you can go to walk up and taste product, so my rating could be totally off on the aesthetic. I think the economic value is high. They're growing enormous amounts of food indoors. I think the social impact is also high. It's been amazing to see how they've engaged their local community, chosen Newark as a place that they want to set up this business, and generate so many jobs. And I think, again, the only reason I'm putting the medium on there for the ecological benefits is because the amount of energy consumed by the lights is probably still a challenge for all vertical farms going forward for the next few years. But they're saving so much water and growing so much food in so little space and really reducing those food miles. So again, this is a way to kind of think about how we frame urban agriculture and how we can kind of begin to assess what projects are good for our city and what projects are good for this site specifically. So what are some of the challenges and opportunities in the future of urban agriculture? Well, one main challenge is going to be expensive land and real estate. But I think we have an opportunity there by making NYC an ag tech leader. If we can overcome these high real estate costs, then we can prove if you can do it here, you can do it anywhere. There's a labor and talent deficit. I think we need more quality growers who understand all kinds of systems to grow and cultivate food. And I think that we need job training programs. I think that's a really exciting opportunity for us. And there's some members at the NYC Ag Collective and NYC Ag Tech Week that are engaged in that directly, including Kathy Soll at Teams for Food Justice and the Green Bronx Machine, starting that next generation coming up. The sustainability impact of urban farms is still unclear. There begins to be debates about the social impact, the price of the product that's coming out of them. So I think one thing that we can do is to begin to certify urban farms so that city leaders can make better decisions about creating incentives and creating spaces for urban farms to thrive. I think the aesthetic potential is stifled sometimes. I think these projects are having such a difficult time to make them economically viable and to achieve their sustainability impact that often aesthetic is forgotten at the end, especially as we get to more of the high-tech spectrum. I'd like to see that shaken up a little bit, and I think we could create standardization of equipment and materials in these farms so that architects can take them on. What do I mean there? You see a lot of architects designing conceptual urban farms, vertical farms, utopian-esque ones. What they don't understand is how yields are calculated, how wastage is calculated, how distribution happens in those kinds of structures. If we created standardization around those elements, architects would begin to design buildings that could actually grow food and could reflect the realities of growing food in the city. And I think that's an important next step for us to do. Just like it happened with green walls and green roofs. You can get a manual, you can learn about how much water is used, how much yield is created. The same thing needs to happen for urban farms so they can be integrated into future projects. Thank you so much for your time. I'm really grateful to Alexina, Charles, and Hunter College for this time today. I'm looking forward to this exciting panel.
That was great, Henry. Thank you so much. Let me just shut this off so our panelists can see. There we go. Now you have vision again. Okay, so what I'd like to do is, starting with Kathy, if you could just sort of introduce yourself and a little bit about what you do in 1 to 2 minutes, and that'll be wonderful. Just go in order.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Kathy Soll. I'm the CEO and director and founder of Teens for Food Justice. So Teens for Food Justice works to bring healthy, fresh food and access to the skills and resources to improve nutrition and health for communities at risk by teaching kids to build hydroponic farms in their schools and communities, how to run and manage those farms, how to grow high quantities of food for their schools and communities, and then also to educate others in the skills around nutrition and health that they have learned. We're 3 years old. We started in Brooklyn at a charter school. We're now in our second site, which is a public middle school located in the Bed-Stuy Clinton Hill border, which is one of the most rapidly gentrifying areas in New York City, which is, you may be aware that Brooklyn just this past week was reported as now being the most food insecure borough in Manhattan, having surpassed the Bronx recently through the current statistics, so the need is very high. And we are currently in the process of expanding to 2 additional schools, high schools in both the Bronx and Manhattan, also serving very high need populations. We started with farms that are capable of growing vertically, hydroponically, 50 to 80 pounds of produce a month, which really has a significant impact on the daily experience of the children, both through food consumption as well as education, and also for the surrounding community through ongoing distribution of food and community education and engagement events around healthy eating. But now in our new farms, we're expanding to much larger sites within these schools, and within 1,300 square feet, we'll be able to grow over 22,000 pounds of produce a month and actually supply the cafeterias of these schools with their needs for produce daily that we in a hydroponic farm are capable of growing, and this will have significant impact, we believe, on the students themselves in the community. It involves job training, as Henry spoke about, and really preparing these kids through their experience in building and managing the farms and understanding the hydroponic technology, how to actually transition into a green collar workforce. So we're really excited that you guys are all here today and look forward to hearing of my fellow panelists.
Good morning, I'm Jason Green. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Edenworks. Edenworks is a company based in Bushwick, Brooklyn. We develop technology for vertical indoor farming using a specific kind of technology called aquaponics. So we farm fish. We break down the waste from fish using a population of natural, sort of like composting bacteria. And then the plants absorb all of the fertilizer from the fish and those composting bacteria and filter the water that we send back to the fish. We develop both kind of the vertical farm technology itself as well as the software and all of the biological systems. And then we are a grower of ready-to-eat packaged salads, and you'll see us across Whole Foods New York City stores in early 2017.
Nice.
Hey, my name's Rob Laing, and I'm from Farm.one, and we're kind of a brand new player in this space. We moved into New York City in April this year, and what we're doing is growing really rare and unusual culinary herbs, greens, and microgreens aimed at high-end restaurants in New York City. And the whole way this kind of came about was I was pretty excited at the range of stuff that you could get at farmers markets. Actually in LA is where I kind of came up with the idea. But I was frustrated by the fact that maybe 2 weeks later you wouldn't be able to get the same thing, or you would be able to get one kind of produce from one farmer, but the quantity that you would be able to get it from was so low. So my idea actually sort of started with this particular herb called papalo. And I don't know, has anybody in the audience even heard of this thing, papalo? Yeah, like 2 people. And Henry only knows it because I told him about it. So This is a Mexican herb that's used in central Mexico in sandwiches called semitas. And these sandwiches are like very sort of fatty pork and cheese sandwiches. And they use this papalo to kind of cut through that fat. And it's sort of a little bit like a cilantro. And I just love it. But the idea of getting that in New York City, like in the middle of February, like impossible, right? And so I thought, okay, maybe there's a way of doing this with, you know, some of the techniques that you've heard about already today. So we use hydroponics, we use artificial lighting, we're in a completely controlled environment, and we can grow stuff like papalo year round, and we can grow it at very high quality. And so what we're trying to do is, we're not trying to be like the biggest vertical farm in the world, like AeroFarms. We're trying to kind of be the smallest. So we've started with this very small prototype space. We're inside the Institute of Culinary Education, which is in downtown Manhattan. We have a space which is about the size of like a couple of big sofas, like it's not a very big space. But we're growing produce for chefs, and we've grown about 150, 160 different varieties of rare herbs and greens already in the space of the past 4 months. And our target really is to be able to bring this kind of interesting rare stuff that you can't get hold of, or maybe you've never even heard of, and bring it to chefs at the best restaurants in New York year round. And we're located right in the middle of Manhattan because we want to be like 20 minutes away from our customers, which means we can harvest, and then maybe an hour later or 2 hours later, the food is on someone's plate. And so that's our version of urban agriculture. But yeah, we're brand new, we're very, very small. And you know, who knows what's going to happen, but that's us. Yeah.
So I'm Ed Harwood. I'm the Chief Science Officer for AeroFarms. And you saw a movie, so I'm not going to try to repeat that. I think there are 3 inflection points that are very instructive to share. The first one was the discovery of cloth in 2004 as a reusable media, which meant that we no longer needed to depend upon soil, and allows the future automation of things and quite a few other benefits. This second inflection point would be in 2009 when we moved from high-pressure sodium lights to LED lights. LED lights have been, probably will make much of this possible. Because you have so much control that the sun does not allow you to have. It's very difficult to control light with sunshine. I actually wrote a white paper on why sun was so expensive as well. So, and then the third inflection point that I think is instructive is when we merged with a company called Just Greens, and that allowed us to go to scale. So instead of being a small farm, as we had been for all the time previously, we're now able to employ people, engage the community, have sufficient expertise to make this something that's sustainable and long-term. So we have on our staff a couple of food safety people, we have a microbiologist, we have a plant pathologist, we just have all the expertise that's necessary to answer the scientific questions. And I'll finish with this. Architecture is necessary, engineering is necessary, but biology is the imperative in this. And if you forget the biology, you can try to grow plants in the middle of the room and think that you can do that with 25 micromoles of light, and you're going to get pretty scrawny, awful plants. So biology is the imperative aspect of this.
So good morning, I'm Steve Ritz, and I'm a CEO, but I refer to myself as Chief Eternal Optimist of Bronx County. I am the founder of Green Bronx Machine. It was fascinating listening to Henry, because the one thing I'm not is a farmer. So I really have no agricultural experience, no horticulture experience, but 40,000 pounds of vegetables later, grown with kids in the South Bronx. My favorite crop is organically grown citizens, graduates, members of the middle class, kids who are getting jobs, kids who are working for you, kids who are going to college, kids who are aspiring to do things they never imagined before. My work started uniquely with over-age, undercredited kids, in the green roof and green wall space, just getting kids living wage jobs, doing labor, what they considered fun, but a lot better pay than McDonald's. And kind of went viral after I gave a talk at Columbia called From Crack to Cucumbers, where I bought kids who were formerly selling crack and heroin across Washington Heights, Harlem, and the South Bronx, who are now selling cucumbers and doing green roofs. So it was kind of a fun transition. Along the way, we have partnered towards 2,200 local jobs, moved targeted attendance with at-risk kids from 40% to 93%, and graduated cohort after cohort of kids from high school and sent them on to college, which to me is critical. And then I had an epiphany. I just wanted to raise healthy children. I didn't want to get people down the spectrum. I wanted them to come up, because I have this theory that, you know, kids can't be well-read if they're not well-fed. So I kind of just chucked everything that I was doing at high school and said, you know what, I'm going to do this with little kids. Because New York City school system, which I'm a part of, was in tremendous transition, and literally I felt like I could cure cancer, I could cure AIDS, I could roll back tsunamis and earthquakes. And the chancellor and the mayor would say, Steve, nice, what about test scores and attendance? Which is the sad reality of the metric I'm measured against. That's the biology, if you will, of my system. You know, we don't care about kids, we care about metrics. I hate to say it. But along the way, you can have a lot of fun. So I have decided to do the art and science of growing plants aligned to Common Core. So this notion of health, wellness, and nutrition and cooking in the poorest congressional district in America, in the middle of the largest stretch of public housing in New York City, which is often referred to as a reservation. It's 18 blocks to a subway. I took a 100-year-old building, a 110-year-old building, got some seated space, and turned it into the National Health, Wellness, and Learning Center. And it is the epicenter for the entire school. And the art and science of growing vegetables aligned to Common Core has been everything that we're doing in this school. And I'm proud to say that my kids advocated for the banning of chocolate milk. And actually got chocolate milk kicked out of my school, in addition to having a 45% school-wide increase in passing rates and test scores in just 2 years. So that's what I'm doing, and I'm having a lot of fun. I'm having a lot of fun.
Thanks to all of you. So my first question is to the panel, and I've been listening to everybody, and I had a whole series of questions here, but I'm going to change and just ask one right off the bat, because when I listen to this, and I listen to everything everybody's saying, I get really excited, and I think, oh my gosh, this is incredible, what could possibly happen with urban agriculture and technology. And I guess maybe I felt that way when I was younger about fish farming. And I guess my question, the first question of the panel is are there things that we need to be concerned about because now it's all new and exciting, and the idea of being in Newark and being able to have this vertical farm that's just, the thought of it is so fascinating, to be in an urban center and not have to be reliant on weather and all these other things that we are so vulnerable to. What are the things that we need to be worried about? What are the things that we need to be concerned about in terms of urban agriculture and technology that we're not really aware about, that maybe keep you up at night?
I'll address that. I was asked a little bit earlier out in the lobby while we were waiting how I felt about animal agriculture, which I used to be in. And my answer was there's always in every industry, and I think now we can consider ourselves as an industry. I really like that thought. Yes? Yes. Okay. So as an industry, you're always endangered by the worst actors, who tend to be the people who are the least educated and understanding of what the industry is about. And I think that at some point that could be a problem for us, because there are things that can go wrong, and the most important one, the one that's in the press all the time, is food safety. And we have 2 food safety oriented people on our staff to help us make sure that we don't make people sick. And so I think and it's difficult because it's an expensive thing to take on. It's time consuming, Is the mic out? Oh, okay. Sorry. I would just say that taking some care to do that, and I think it's great that the Association of Vertical Farming is taking on some of these training aspects. I would encourage you to look at the same thing, because we're all very concerned about food safety, and if somebody gets sick, the industry could be labeled as opposed to just the business.
And just one follow-up, and then you can take. So, do you think that with the ag technology, do you think that eventually it's going to be where, or could be where, this is going on a farm, not in a center? Is that going to be an issue? So, follow up with you, and then we can add that to the questions.
So, one of the things that's really nice about this technology, and if you haven't gathered it from across the panel here, is it's scalable at lots of different levels. So I don't think it will ever be saying, well, it has to be on the farm. There's lots of places to be, lots of customers to serve, a real thirst for tasty stuff. So I'm not sure that if I understand your question, I'm not sure we're going to get there.
And what I would add to Ed's point, and I had the same thought, that it's food safety that is the biggest risk. The Food Safety Modernization Act, specifically the produce safety rule, is just about to come online. It doesn't apply to most of us. We have designed all of our SOPs around the FSMA, but the fact is that if you are a forward-thinking operator, if you are serious, you're going to be designed for the produce safety role. But there are going to be, this industry at large is a startup industry. There are going to be lots of operators who are not operating to that standard. And even if it's not, even if it's not the least educated, it's going to be operators who don't feel like they need to be operating at that level. And you've got the legacy of the Taylor Farms of the world and the Earthbounds that are operating at these massive levels, and that's what the legislation has been designed for. And there's going to be lots of stuff that doesn't apply or is cumbersome for this industry. And so that's also going to be a challenge, is when you are growing indoors and you have limited or no E. coli risk or reduced listeria risk, but you're designing your SOPs, increasing your cost of goods sold to manage the risk from all of these other enteric pathogens. Those are things that we just kind of have to absorb those blows and do the right thing so that we can ensure safety in this industry, because there are going to be lots of small upstart operators who don't take that seriously. And it's important for us to do the right thing to prove that we can operate safely, and as this industry then matures, we can drag the regulations towards, or at least create a separate set of regulations that are appropriate for indoor growers. But at least in the meantime, we have to hold ourselves to those standards that have been designed for the Taylor Farms and Man Foods and Earthbounds of the world that are operating at the $100 million or $1 billion level in terms of produce sales.
So the last speaker we had was the founder and editor-in-chief, Naomi Starkman from Civil Eats. And she wrote this, and I thought it was really interesting. There's a tremendous capital interest in tech aimed at changing the way farms themselves run. Google Ventures, Kleiner Perkins, and other venture capital firms, along with General Mills, Campbell's, Kellogg's, Land O'Lakes, are all now investing in ag tech. Bayer and, I don't know if I'm going to Syngenta, have introduced an $11.5 billion fund called Ag Tech Accelerator. Bayer's also teaming up with DuPont to create a $15 million accelerator fund to back early stage ag tech companies. Microsoft and Monsanto announced another partnership to invest in ag tech startups in Brazil with a $92 million fund. All this commercial funding of ag tech can be concerning. And are you concerned? It seems like this panel is made up of very thoughtful thinkers, and I feel very comfortable having the food that we eat in your hands, but when it starts to spread, again, I know that I sort of went around this before, but does this concern you? These companies like Monsanto and Campbell and so forth investing in ag tech?
I think one of the first things to say is that when I've looked at the numbers, the actual investment numbers in indoor agriculture have not been super high yet. And a lot of those investment numbers that you're talking about tend to be things like large-scale farming technologies, drones, irrigation, that kind of thing. So Personally, I mean, I think you guys are probably the largest investment in indoor agriculture to date. So I haven't seen those big numbers come into indoor ag. And I think, we all tend to have this kind of bad picture when, the moment the name Monsanto comes up, we all go like, but the reality is that, those companies are sort of the big players in the space, and we buy all that food like every day. We buy lettuce from the supermarket that's been grown by someone using Monsanto seeds. So I think that, I think all we can do from our side is say, we think we're going about this the right way. We think that moving some of this production from, huge monoculture farms that are in the middle of nowhere, shipping it thousands of miles to New York City, we think instead of doing that, growing it here in New York City, we can bring back some control of that. That's almost I feel like almost all we can do. But I think one of the really good things that can happen there is that, part of this whole movement is saying, well, not all our food has to be grown on a massive, massive farm that's thousands of miles away. That it can be grown, in a commercial facility. It might even be able to be grown by some of us locally ourselves. And that's exciting because it brings back, some ownership. And it means that money, those huge dollar figures that you talked about, maybe that doesn't have to be the whole picture, that we can bring back some of that power. And I think that's what these guys are kind of doing. But.
I would add that there are three different kind of themes that are baked into that one idea. The first is that ag tech investing, kind of as Rob alluded to, has largely been focused on the broad acre. But what's really interesting about that is the innovations that have been invested in are not the innovations that we have seen over the past 50 years, which are largely bastardizations of biology. Instead, you're seeing innovation in technologies that will allow us to use fewer resources and get more out, and not through just GMOs, but even like Monsanto, frankly, to give them a lot of credit. They made a huge investment in their partnership with Novozyme and are creating, microbial cultures and focusing on the microbiome. Now, some of that is genetically modified microbes, and there's a huge concern about that, especially because of lateral gene transfer in microbial communities. But I think that the ag tech innovations that we will see even out of the corporates over the next 5, 10, 20 years are going to move towards these either ecological innovations or using data, whether it's through satellite data or drone data, that those using that sort of data that wasn't available to us before will actually allow us to reduce the use of things like Roundup. And so there is a lot of potential there. The second theme I would focus on is that a lot of the investment has been in food tech, not in ag tech. And again, basically none of that has been in indoor farming. The third is that the big ag tech companies and even the big food tech companies are now investing in vertical integration. They're buying up companies, whether, if you're a food tech company, you're buying innovative CPG companies. If you're an ag tech company, you're buying really innovative companies that are doing things that are more ecological, that are data driven. And so I think there is this kind of shifting landscape around where that capital is coming from, and it's not necessarily a bad thing. And I think that you do need capital, you do need exit opportunities, you do need funding in order to make this innovation happen. But I think that the ideas that the next generation of innovators are driving are ultimately what's going to write the ag tech landscape. And so sure, there's the legacy of all the really evil stuff, but the innovations that people are interested in today and the innovations that we need to see out in order to overcome these limits in terms of feeding 9 billion people are going to be things that are really exciting.
I would just like to add that I think this is a significant social, economic issue. People buy from those large companies and support those large companies because that's what they can afford, that's what they get the calories they want from. So changing that may or may not be within the province of what we do. We're certainly trying. We have a machine that's about 50 feet from the salad bar in a school in Newark. Very exciting. It grows those same 22 crops a year, and the students run the whole thing, and it's in that sense a little more present than a rooftop garden. That's just one example of what we're doing can do to help children grow up and understand where food comes from and the importance of it. So when you compare a 1/4 pound of leafy greens to a 1/4 pounder, the choice is a 1/4 pound, not a 1/4 pounder.
I'd like to ask one disclaimer. Not a supporter of what's going on day to day in terms of like Monsanto and all of that. Absolutely, like let's make that really clear. But I'm an optimist, and the innovations that I'm seeing kind of on the front lines is what gives me hope that the future of ag tech is promising and responsible.
So this is a question for Kathy. So Teams for Food Justice uses hydroponic technology to grow crops indoors for schools, similar to what you were talking about, Ed. Not similar, but along the same lines. For schools, families, and neighborhoods. How much produce are we talking about, and is it enough to impact food insecurity in the surrounding neighborhoods and in children's homes? And can you talk more about it?
Sure. So currently, in our farms, we're able to produce 50 to 80 pounds of produce per month. And so, that provides ongoing experiences within the cafeteria. A couple of times a month, we're able to have events where our students who work with us in the farm prepare foods and then help to serve them in the cafeteria. And of course, anytime the children are serving one another foods that are prepared with the produce that we grow in the farm, everybody gets super excited about it and really wants to eat it. And it really changes a perception of what's delicious and what's desirable to eat. Because if you've grown it yourself and you've cooked it yourself and your friends are serving it to you, you're going to be a lot more enthusiastic about it. We also have community-wide distributions, and the impact is definitely measurable. We've been able to measure over the 3 years that we've been doing this program at that scale, that families are very excited about the program and they return, and that the impact that it's having on the way that children in the school and also their families are thinking about food is affecting the way that they think about what they want to put on the table every day. And one of the clearest metrics that we've been able to see is that parents' purchasing decisions are really driven very much by what they believe their kids will eat. So if you are particularly struggling with a very tight budget, and you want to put healthier food on the table, but you're a little bit afraid, if I go and spend the money on this, if I take the time to do this, my kid won't eat it. That's a really hard call. It's much easier to stay with what you know. But if your kids are having the experience of eating these healthier foods in school, and they come home and say, I want to try brown rice and beans or turkey tacos, you're going to be a lot more excited about the possibility of making that and taking that risk with your food dollars. In our new schools that are coming online, our high school settings, we're talking about 1,300 square foot spaces within the school, repurposed chemistry labs, spaces in the cafeteria that have been used for storage that are being repurposed for farming. And we're talking about over 22,000 pounds of produce a year. Now there, you're really having the ability to make an impact within the community.
What was that, how many pounds?
Over 22,000 pounds of produce annually. And there's a great deal of surplus beyond what the cafeteria needs. And this is both leafy greens, lettuces, kales, chard, collards, some herbs, but in a more limited quantity, as well as tomatoes, cucumbers, peppers. So food people can really eat and cook with every day. That's our focus.
I almost believe like someday we might have like we have Starbucks, we could have not necessarily AeroFarms, but retail farm stands that are actually grown in as retail stores where people can go and get their produce and food and things like that. Is that possible?
Sounds like a good plan. I like it.
Or is that a dream? So Steve, I want to ask you, taking off what Kathy just was finishing, about the nutrition education aspects of growing your own food, because you're really so close to that.
Right, so Kathy touches on a great point in taking it a step larger. There's a great program in New York City with local farmers through Grow NYC, Fresh Food Box, where we are flooding high-needs communities with local access to local food. And because my little guys like eating it, we are seeing just a massive spike in consumership, turning these subsidized programs profitable. model in communities like mine. We couldn't get people to eat vegetables. Now we've got lines of people showing up every week to buy them. So it is like awesome sauce, as far as I'm concerned. You know, people are really showing up. For me, you know, I would be tying it back to safety. Of course, you know, I run a school, so it has to be safe. Safety is tantamount in all that we do, but I also like to think about two other words, equitable and transformational, because that's really, for me, what the purpose of education is about. So I like to think safe, but I like to think about what's equitable and transformational or transformative. And in that regard, I think it's important to really talk about who the big players are in the space, because I also run a 501c3. I've been broke my whole life, and I run a broke 501c3. And you know, I stay broke, but there are certain people I won't take money from because of the way they treat communities or the way they treat other communities. And I think that's part of the larger lesson that we always need to look at if we're going to move kids, and particularly kids of color and poverty, out of poverty. If we're going to move, you know, immigrants from around the world to respect what's going on, and also raise up the next generation of people who really respect the earth. For me, the biggest benefit of all of this is that when you teach kids about nature, you teach them to nurture. And you know, when children learn to nurture, we as a society collectively embrace our better nature. And that's part of what this is all about for me. I'm excited about your mom. I'm excited about everybody's model. I'm excited about seeing kids who want to grow up and be farmers. I'm excited about kids who can tell me what lettuce was 3 years ago, being, you know, real discriminating consumers and Gotham Greens wanting the red bib over the red tiered tongue. I mean, they know more about it than I do, and that's totally cool. It's totally cool, and it's also great to know, like seeing, you know, Tony's program. My kids built his greenhouse, and those were, you know, kids who were, you know, basically going to that same community with guns before they got jobs, and that's the transformation, that's the equity piece that I want to see. And it all comes through food, it's not negotiable.
So food insecurity, as we know, is a major issue, especially in underserved communities. And I guess, can urban agriculture and technology solve some of these, you know, major food insecurity issues? And I guess, and how, and where are we on a, let's say, a scale of 1 to 100 at the start of this?
Unequivocally, yes, and I just want to jump in and I'll tell you why. Research indicates that in communities like mine, 56% of the calories consumed are things that the body wasn't even designed to eat. Refined sugar, white flour, things that the body can't even consume. So the minute you start teaching kids about what food really is, and you are reducing the things that shouldn't be going to their body, I mean, I'm a case study. Look, I was 300 pounds a couple of years ago, you know, just eating what was available in my community until I knew better. But in order to know better, I had to be taught. I had to understand. So anytime that you are putting fresh, healthy food in front of a child and giving them the opportunity to understand it, and then realize that it's actually grown, it's not a thing being produced in the bottom or in the back of a truck, that they can do it, that they can grow it, they can produce it, that is game-changing.
So on a scale of 1 to 100, where are we at the start of, are we at the very start of this infancy of this process? And how long will it take? Open to the panel.
I mean, I think we are in the very beginning of this process, and I think that there is been such a groundswell of interest and excitement and enthusiasm about how to do that. I think that it's coming from all aspects of the sector. I think, you know, the commercial end as well as on the, you know, nonprofit end, service to community, service to, you know, to commercial means to job growth. I think it's a very integrated sector in that way, and I believe that it is potentially a real solution to this problem, because I think if you can localize this process in this way, you can open up jobs in an industry, in a real working industry on a local level in urban centers that have lost the ability to employ people in this way, and really growing food on a scale that can supply a local community in a meaningful way. Our vision is to be able to have youth-run and community-run farms all throughout the city that are able to sell food affordably into the community, distribute food through food box, pair with commercial manufacturers and vendors, with restaurants, with your local grocery chains, really creating a local movement. And I think that the Farm to School initiative that the state is introducing now also has real potential for that if we can begin to expand that beyond the upstate farms, but also to the local urban farms.
I think there's also some really interesting trends that are happening right now that maybe aren't fully represented on this panel, but there are something like 800 or 900 farms in New York. The majority of them are subsistence farms. Largely in immigrant communities. You have entire communities that are coming from places in the world where it is expected that you grow fresh vegetables in your backyard or in your communities. And so I think, for example, what we're doing at Edenworks is very much it's a supply side solution. It's making sure that when you go into the grocery store, there's a more nutritious option. And the fact is that there are as Steve was saying, there are far more calories than vitamins and minerals available, and we're trying to fix that problem. But the other problem also, I think, goes back to Henry's point in terms of access to space, in terms of equity. We do need to account for the behavior changes and the health changes that can be had by allowing people to maintain what are already really healthy cultural habits of growing your own food.
So I just wanted to narrow this down, because I think this is just important for our audiences. How can urban ag tech solve some of our food insecurity problems? It's like a direct question, I guess, that I really want to get answered. Are we so far away from that, or are we getting closer? And I guess, Ed, you would be the best person to answer that, because you have the biggest vertical farm, and you kind of know this space pretty well.
I think the issue here is we need a lot more people that are very passionate about big ideas, because the technology is available to do this. So it's really about people grasping that technology and making it grow the things that we should be eating and making it available to the people at a reasonable price. We're a ways away from that. I think we can probably all agree, but we need people that are passionate about solving this, this problem, that have big dreams about feeding things, because food deserts just don't go away all by themselves. They need both the supply side and the demand side.
Right, and this will be my last question, I guess, and then we'll open up to the audience. Going off of what you just said, profitability is probably a critical component for ag tech, urban ag tech to sort of develop, and also investment from private sources and also from the government. So where are we on those three things? Profitability and certainly investment privately and publicly. Is that something that's lacking, that's widespread, that needs more of? And how does ag tech become more interesting and sexy, like some of the food tech companies that are out there, like trying to develop an easier way for you to order food to your house, which is things like that have been heavily invested in?
I don't disagree with the point that was made about where much of this investment money is going, but I think if our own experience, AeroFarms' experience, is instructive, we're able to get quite a bit of capital, and it's because what we're showing is profitability. You don't get people to take their hard-earned money or easily inherited money or whatever the source is, okay? You don't get them to part with it. You don't get them to part with those funds unless you show them something that's going to give it a return. I think that potential is there, and it comes in many forms, which I think is just wonderful. You can have someone supplying a specialty crop that people desire, that's employing some people and using this technology. You can have someone building our future, okay, and thank you for that, okay. We're going to have future employees and future enthusiasts here, so I think, I don't know, I think we have an opportunity, and maybe it's at a particular time we need to take advantage of it, if that's possible.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think, if you wanted to put this on a scale of 1 to 100, I think we're still down at like the 5 or something right now. You see a lot of people here who are enthusiasts, like we're all in this because we kind of love it. Like the real mark of success for this stuff is if you go to the bodega and like they're either growing something or they bought it from someone who's growing it nearby, where like the crappy supermarket, not the Whole Foods, not the beautiful places, it's It's where the really basic stuff is coming from New York City. And I think we have a route to get there. I think some of us have to be the pioneers there. I think these guys are obviously, doing something on a big scale. We're doing something on a smaller scale. We will get there. And if you look at the trend of, for instance, LED pricing, it's roughly halving every 4 years or so. It's sort of like a slow Moore's law. In 10 years' time, you're going to have systems that are going to be 1/5 of the cost of what they are now or less. And it starts to be the sort of price point where people can run a corner store with something growing leafy greens in the top, or someone in the local environment is doing that for all the stores in the neighborhood.
I like that idea, by the way, as I said before. So anybody that wants to do that, you should go up there and talk to. Yes.
I just would like to add that along those lines, we've been asked by a restaurant, a very high-end restaurant here in New York, to build them a hydroponic system that they can keep in the restaurant and utilize every day for microgreens and also herbs that they can incorporate into their food. Now, obviously, that's on the high end of the spectrum, and it's not, the Starbucks model. But I think that's a step. It is a step. It's a way of beginning to experiment with that kind of really super hyper-local growing and for-profit. And I think that is an interesting model for us to look at as we begin to expand beyond what we're doing in schools and seeing how we can service a commercial market that can help to then reinvest in the nonprofit side of the work that we're doing and really make a difference in the price point that we can offer in feeding communities at risk.
And just quickly, are there public funds available to sort of seed these investments?
They're not coming to me. I think there's some other, go ahead, I'm sorry.
So Ed can certainly talk more because AeroFarms has gotten more incentives than we have. But there are seed these projects, no. But support them, yes. And there are a variety, from working capital grants if you want to produce a value-added product. USDA does have grants available. We just met with the FSA, the Farmer Services Administration. They're creating an urban ag liaison because most of the FSA funds are focused on rural applications. They really aren't focused on urban applications. And so there is at least an awareness on the public funding side. Capital is limited, but then there are incentives which Ed can probably talk about, that if you're building a great business, the government wants to support that.
Thank you. So I'll open it up to some questions. Yes.
If you look at the landscape in New York, New Jersey, and even around the world, everyone seems to be focused on leafy greens and herbs. I was just wondering what the either technological or profitable barriers are to fruits and vegetables and mushrooms and anything else you could think of that are high-cost items that could be profitable.
The really simple answer is herbs and leafy greens grow really fast, and time is kind of money when you've got artificial lights, or you've got expensive rent, or you've got expensive labor. And I think that's why we haven't seen a lot of people trying to do longer growth cycle crops in an urban environment. And I don't really see that changing anytime soon. I don't know about you guys, but the economics, even on a quick growth crop like basil, that's relatively high price, are still the margins are still razor thin on that. So if you were trying to grow like an avocado or blueberries or something, I think you're going to have a really tough time making that work. I don't know what you guys think.
Yeah, the real epiphany at AeroFarms is to go into the produce section and look at a head of lettuce for $1, and it takes 40 days to grow, and that's 40 days of energy. And you look at a bag of leafy greens that took 16 days to grow, and it sells for 6 times that. So the economics of it right now that's what we're doing. And I don't think you should despair that we're doing this at the high end, because I think a number of us have said, this is how we're learning how to do this technology. This is how we're learning to capitalize on the understanding and the advantages of LEDs. And I think that's a promising future.
I'd add that a lot of this is a market issue. There's leafy greens at the wholesale level in the U.S. is like a $3.4 billion market. Most of the tomatoes, like to use a fruit example, most of the tomatoes grown in America are tomatoes used by McDonald's at all. You know, like that's where most of the product is going. There is a limited market for like your $9 a pound Union Square Farmers Market, like late July tomato. There's a very limited market for that. And so, you know, the products that an indoor farm would go into, we do need to drag the market. People like, you know, there's a huge disparity between the $9 a pound tomato and the $1 a pound or less tomato. And so we can all be growing better product, but how can we make that affordable? That's the major question, and how big is the market, and how much innovation can you afford in a small market? And those are the real questions that we as the operators are wrangling with. We want to grow better food, we want to grow more of it, we want to grow for everybody, but figuring out how to fund that innovation and whether the juice is worth the squeeze. Those are the tough problems that we can't solve ourselves.
Yeah, I have a question. How does the city, I forgot. How does the city play a role in everything that you're doing? Because first they were trying to incorporate green markets, and they thought that was a great idea, put green markets everywhere so we can buy the produce with this and that benefits. Now you're telling us that we can grow stuff from our roofs and stuff. How does the city play out in everything that you do? Have you guys talked to like policymakers and stuff? What do they think about what you're doing? How does it move forward?
I can answer that in relation to our program, which is that we are this year in the development of our larger farms in the high schools. We do have support from the city. We have very strong support from Barbara Turk, who is the New York City Director of Food Policy, because the program really rounds out the experience. It connects the science education to the design build education, to the job training, to the food distribution. We also are receiving funding from the Manhattan Borough President's Office and local city council in the Bronx and Manhattan to build these farms and schools. But of course, these are school-based farms, they're not commercial operations, and they're student-run. So it's tied into a very different kind of model than the commercial farming. But we are getting very strong support. We're talking to the Brooklyn Borough President. We're speaking with stakeholders in Queens. We have affordable housing developers who are working with us, and of course they're accessing city funding. And we have two major hospitals that are working with us. Montefiore Hospital in the Bronx is a very strong partner and a funding partner of our project at DeWitt Clinton High School. So I do feel that that is beginning to develop as a real source of support.
I wasn't trying to be glib, but that, we were reading the other day how the students now want to allow food on their plate and kosher meals that should be introduced into their diet in the public schools, and you're talking about 1 million some odd school kids. This food thing is a very burning issue for everybody, so we're just trying to get a handle on the fact that we're listening, we're watching, and we're paying attention to what's going on.
I would like to know if any of you employ UX research, service design, or ethnography methods to push your programs and do further research in developing new ideas for your initiatives.
I didn't catch the...
I just want to know if any of you apply UX research, service design, or ethnography methods to push your agendas and programs forward.
Yes, I'd like to know more.
I mean, I think on this panel, it's kind of interesting because we got 3 people here who are pretty commercially driven, and then 2 people who are doing things, in a much more community-driven way. And that's the nice thing about ag tech in New York City, I would say right now. But from my perspective, I'm really just trying to grow a product that I think some people are going to pay money for and that we can deliver. It's like super simple commercial kind of stuff. But maybe you guys. How do you target, what you're doing? Is it?
Well, the bottom line is, for me to do the work that I do, I quit my day job in order to do it. So I'm a volunteer in a school where you can't fire me in order to get it done. Otherwise, I go back to being a principal. But I'm kind of going in a space where no one has gone before in a very large system, as the gentleman said in the back. And sometimes, if the system, I want to be a speedboat, but it's tough to turn a cruise ship around in the harbor. so to speak, and I'm very much part of a cruise ship. That said, some of the things that I always have to look for are school-based metrics, but also some of the things that are much more important to me that I wanted to address before, and that is, understand that when I've lost 120 pounds, my kids have lost thousands of pounds. We've reduced the need for summer school. We are increasing teacher retention. We're increasing student attendance. These are things that are the kinds of metrics that you can't see almost immediately. Well, you certainly can see attendance immediately. But when I know I'm keeping a kid from a lifetime of chronic health ailments because they're eating well, that to me is really critical. When I know kids are not going to wind up being on, even my own person, I'm waiting for a refund from my insurance company. I used to be on 80 milligrams of Lipitor 5 years ago. I'm on none now. I have no medication. I have no doctor expenses. Maybe I should get therapy or something and just send them a bill. But that's kind of how I feel. When you look at those cost savings overall, these are some of the critical things that I think we need to look at as part of the larger landscape. And of course, as technology becomes cheaper, when I started this, there were no LED lights. I had soil in the classroom. It was crazy. People were hating me. I can't wait for 5 years from now. I'm so excited. Like from where I sit, it's the mindset of innovation. I say, I'm married to my wife, and everything else is innovation. Yeah, no, because Henry went to school with my wife. It's just the whole circle. Everything else is innovation, but that's exciting. But this spirit of can-do, of health, of ownership, of really moving. My kids get excited by $9 a pound tomatoes. They know the difference between the cheap, nasty ones and the really delicious ones. And they really want really delicious ones all year long. And that's kind of exciting because I think ultimately we're raising up a generation of people who, A, are willing to go out there and work for it, have the means and the ability to go out there and get a job to pay for it, and then ultimately go out and shop for it. And if that's not enough, man, maybe they'll grow it at home as well. Or in their backyard, or go to a Starbucks that has vegetables. So I think, on the evolutionary chart of man, my knuckles are still scraping the ground, but I'm trying to get from the left to the right and bring a whole bunch of kids with me.
There are some interesting things that are said here, and I'm partnering with Rutgers, and we're trying to sort out why do children like leafy greens in a scientific way. So is it peer pressure? Is it the economics? Is it just the excitement? Or is it the taste of the leafy greens? So we just don't know what those answers are. Would they really like it? Yes, I know, you can watch them grow. Yes.
I was whispering, they grow really fast. There's like a big ROI, immediacy, day to day.
Yes, so we'll put that into the mix and see if we can't parse these things out. But I think that's a very hopeful aspect about this industry. We're now able to bring it right in front of you. So this is not something that happens in Iowa and you see pictures of it, okay? It can happen right in front of you, and that's cool.
For the growers, is there an opportunity to employ people on the autistic spectrum in the years ahead as they normally are employed today in traditional agriculture?
We're just actually starting to employ one guy this week, and that's like a brand new thing for us. He's starting tomorrow, and like we're going to see how it goes. But I think what we're talking about is that the actual practice of working on an urban farm can be a kind of intricate tasks that can be quite sort of, you have a lot of self-control over the situation. It's not like normally a noisy or kind of crazy environment. And that seems to be pretty appealing. So definitely we're kind of interested in it, and we like it because it's a cool thing to do. We also get a tax break, which is nice, so like a lot of reasons why people like us might be doing more of that, I think.
I just want to say that we were actually approached by a school that has a program specifically for autistic kids to develop our program there, and for many of those reasons, and also because it is a really good job training pipeline for people who have specific needs and specific focuses, and we are really excited about the potential for developing that program. So if you want to talk more offline about why that interest was there, I'd be happy to do that.
Hi, I was wondering in terms of community engagement, obviously the schools are a fantastic way to reach out to kids and kids can get parents excited, but you know, when you're trying to change habits of people who are used to, for whatever reason, affordability or whatever it is, going to get the dollar meal, like what other kinds of community engagement have you seen be successful in terms of getting people more interested in produce, leafy greens, healthier eating?
In Newark, they have vacant lots, and I became connected when I first came down to Newark about 3 years ago, my first time partnering with some of those people because they don't have a whole lot of agronomic knowledge. And so I found that both rewarding for me, and I think they benefited significantly from that. And that, again, is a way to engage people in growing their food. So I don't think it's necessarily limited to, it's not just schools. It's interesting that we used to have extension in a different way. So 50 years ago, when I first got involved in agriculture, there were extension educators everywhere in every county that had something to do with agriculture. We don't have that now. Now you have volunteers basically filling in that same function. So if there was, if there's any way to support at the city level, at the county level, at the state level, at the federal level, and that is what cooperative extension was, a partnership of that with supporting educated people to do things, I think that that would be a significant assistance in what we're doing, in what we're able to do with dirt that's available.
The amount of community gardens that I see in some of the formerly most blighted areas in New York City is so inspiring. And I think it's because neighborhoods like mine, quite frankly, are safer now. And they're safer and people are getting involved. So I'm inspired not only by the commercial aspect, not only by what we do in school, but by real citizens who feel that, guess what, it's okay to be outside. You know, I started putting in gardens 20 years ago to stop bullets. That's, you know, I mean, I just wanted seniors to be outside so all the drug dealers would go away because we didn't care about the police, but no one wanted to get, you know, called out by grandma. But now the city's a different place. The landscape of New York City is way different. I think the local community garden movement, you know, God bless them. Support your local community garden. It's a critical piece, you know, whether you're growing food or you're growing flowers or you're bringing bees. It's just that kind of knowledge, creating safe places for people to aggregate, congregate, and build on each other's experiences. That's critical. Yeah, thank you for supporting all those gardens in Newark.
And just a quick plug on November 4th, I think it is, we have an all-day event here, and it's free on community gardens. And there'll be breakout sessions and panels and so forth, so just as a note. Thank you so much. So just a couple announcements. The next New York City Food Policy for Breakfast seminar is October 5th. It's Food is Medicine, and we have an incredible panel. And it really just an outstanding panel. I wish I could take responsibility for how great they are.